أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد. Selamun Alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Inshallah, everyone is doing great. We will continue with our discussion about Surah Yasin from Quran. And I'm just having a little technical issue. Just give me a second, please, if you don't mind. Okay, it should be okay now. Yeah, we will continue with our discussion on Surah Yasin, inshallah. Last week we discussed, last thing we discussed was ayah 36, which is what you see right now. Inshallah, we will start from there just to recap and then continue with 37, inshallah. So before we start, anything that you want to remind us, or any maybe attempt to summarize, or anything that stayed in your mind in previous discussions, any questions, any part that was not clear enough, anything that would be welcome. Okay, there's silence. So as far as I remember, what we studied last week, we started last week with an with a reminder that actually this is from 2 weeks ago. But if we start from there, we said we started with this verse: we didn't send down upon his people after him any soldier. Sorry, I'm a little confused. I'm trying to find the right one. Okay, yes, this one. How regretful, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, how regretful for the servants there didn't come to them any messenger except that they used to ridicule him. So that was the main theme in our discussions for last 2 weeks. And we were studying the link between ridiculing messengers or a messenger and how it is related to destruction of nations, destruction of people, destruction of lives, or death in general. Ridiculing messengers and how it is related to death. And then last week we started discussing how ridiculing messenger actually end up with end up with denying the resurrection, or how it is related to denying the resurrection, or maybe we can say how ridiculing messenger eventually leads us to not to see the consequences of denying the message, and how we are deprive ourselves from the good news of resurrection. We studied that, and also we started studying the signs of resurrection as we see in our life. So for instance, in one verse we studied and they have a sign in the lifeless earth which we make alive, and out of which we bring forth grain whereof they may eat. And then talk about the other plants, other bounties that we get from the dry earth. or similar examples that we went through. And all the main point was reminding us the possibility or even necessity maybe of resurrection, how everything in the creation points to resurrection. But the point is, of course, these pointers, all the signs of resurrection become clear when we do not ridicule messengers. So how we understood this, one way to understand was saying, taking messengers in a literal sense and say that the message they bring us, the prophets, what they teach us, is to teach us to read the universe, read the life, read the creation in a way that everything points to something beyond them, their hereafter. And when we start reading the universe with this mind, we see that there's a purpose, there's a meaning in everything that we interact with. And indeed, every example we see which would remind us, how everything indeed resurrected. So another, than the first way of understanding it, is that the message that the messengers bring teaches us the existence of resurrection. Why this is important? Because it resolves the biggest fear, biggest depression, biggest anxiety, biggest problem in our life, death, which is inevitable. It is waiting for us. But the messengers comes and say that, you know what, actually there is something beyond that. And then give us the evidence for that. Teach us how to read universe to collect all these evidences. And these verses were some examples of these evidences. Another way to read all these verses is that if we take messengers in a broader sense, saying that everything that we interact, everything that we face, for instance, I hear a scream from my daughter coming behind me. This is something I am experiencing right now. If I take it as a messenger, meaning it carries a speech, a message to me from my creator. So it's not simply a scream of my daughter. So the explanation is not that my daughter is bored, so she's trying to, get some attention, and she's just screaming. And that's made me, let's say, for the sake of example, of course it's not true, but for the sake of example, let's say it makes me anxious or angry, maybe, right? I'm trying to discuss something here, but my rascal daughter, she's smiling at me right now, screaming. So this is one way to read it. When I read it that way, there is no message there. It's, things happens and everything ordinary. I'm just get angry and I live with it. But I can also read the same experience as Birkan, there is something in you which is created that you call as anger. And it's telling you something, actually. All these screams telling you something. You thought, right, you would just start speaking, talking beautifully, and people would love you. You would start, teaching them very important points, gushing forth from your, talented mind. But you see, you cannot do that. Just by a little scream, I destroy everything that you rely on, which is a very nice, actually overlap with what we studied 2 weeks ago, saying that it was not but a shout, a scream, and immediately they were extinguished. So all my claims about my, beautiful ideas, about my talents, about my, the ability to teach or explain, they are all destroyed by a simple shout, by a simple scream from a tiny creature. And it's a message for me from my creator, teaching me about my weaknesses, teaching me about my neediness. You don't have any control, Birkan, on yourself. Don't attribute all these beautiful experiences you have, this beauty of discussion, being with your friends, learning something from them. Do not attribute these beauties to yourself or them. If you do so, you will realize that everything is destroyed with a simple scream. So when I don't take my experience as an ordinary experience, it doesn't mean anything. I'm just ridiculing the messenger there. My feelings are messengers. My daughter, she's a messenger right now. And when I do not ridicule them, I see that there's a message, there's a meaning, there's a purpose in everything that I experience. And when I do so, Quran claims that you will start seeing the signs of resurrection in your life. So after all these explanations, for instance, my sense of confidence, dignity was resurrected. After all these session of anger, and then feeling pity about myself, after my creator sent me these ideas that I just shared with you, my dignity is just resurrected. So anyway, and the final verse we studied was limitless in his glory. Subhana, limitless in his glory. Or we can say like there's nothing lacking, without any lack, without any shortcoming. Limitless in his glory is he who has created pairs. I prefer pairs in this translation for Zawja. Pairs in whatever the earth produces and in men's own selves, and in that of which they have no knowledge. So we discussed pairs, and now today, inshallah, we will jump more into details about the pairs, see some examples about pairs. But before that, there's a very interesting part, like a point with this verse. There's like three things is mentioned here. Limitless in his good, Subhana, to who has created pairs in whatever the earth produces, in whatever that we see outside, or in whatever men's own selves. So everything we see outside, everything we see experience inside, and then in that of which they have no knowledge. So these three things, that the things that we interact, that we observe, things that we know from the first hand ourselves, nafs, and then things that we don't know, gaib. So there are all these pairs. So this verse actually giving us kind of a recipe of explanation. It introduces a methodology. It says, when you look at outside the universe, you will see all these evidences, which are manifested as pairs. We studied some of them. We will study a few more now today. You will see these evidences, and you will see signs of resurrection there. When you look at yourself, what is within you, you will see some other evidences, signs, ayah, again for the resurrection. So you will see signs of resurrection outside. You will see signs of resurrection inside. And then he says, use this knowledge. Use whatever you know to make inferences about what you don't know. Otherwise, like, you can take this verse as also, you know, everything is created pairs, and there are many other things who are created in pairs. And believe us, why? Because we say so. We can read the verse as such, or we can read the verse as everything you see outside, everything you see inside should give you confidence about what you don't know. Make some inferences, come to some conclusions about Ghaib. And here in Quran, I will teach you about Ghaib. I will tell you something that you don't know. I will tell you things about unseen. And how are you going to confirm this? See whatever you see out, use whatever you see outside, use whatever you see inside to confirm, tasdik, to confirm what is told to you in Quran about unseen. Okay, after all this long introduction, sorry for wasting your time. Let's start with today's discussion, inshallah. And I need a volunteer named Abdurrahman to read us the Arabic. And then if available, Aisha Nur is there. If she can read the Turkish, sorry, English. We don't have Turkish here. English, that would be great. If not, we can find another victim.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وآيات لهم الليل نسلخ منه النهار فإذا هم مظلمون والشمس تجري مستقر لها ذلك تقدير العزيز العليم. I can read the English as well. Should I read? Okay. And the sign for them is the night. We remove it from it, the light of day, so they are left in darkness. And the sun runs on course toward its stopping point. That is a determination of the exalted in might, the knowing.
Jazakallah khair. And let's read the other two verses again as well. And we will mostly study them together.
والقمر قدرناه منازل حتى عاد كالأرجون القديم لا الشمس ينبغي لها أن تدرك القمر ولا الليل سابق النهار وكل في فلك يسبحون. And the moon we have determined for it phases until it returns, appearing like the old date stalk. It is not allowable for the sun to reach the moon, nor does the night overtake the day, but each in an orbit is swimming.
Jazakallah khairan. So, Abdurrahman, you of course have the priority to share your ideas about the 4 verses that we just read. So if you like to share, again, you have the priority. So other than Abdurrahman, any comments, any, the first thing that attracted your attention about these verses in the light of, what we studied last week, or you may even put them in your own context. So anything that attracted your attention with these verses? like what they are talking about. Atik, please go ahead. And then Abdul Rahman, you can continue after him.
Something I found interesting is that, you know, it says, or Allah says, He removes the light or the day, and so they're left in darkness. And so maybe we don't, or I don't think of it as being removed. I just see as this the sun going away and be natural process because it goes away. The angle of the light does not reach the earth, and it's not like an active, you know, light being removed. It's just moving farther away. And so I thought that was interesting to have like an act that God has an active presence in this world.
Abdul Rahman.
Nothing fleshed out, but just my initial thoughts because I just saw these verses. I mean, it's interesting because previously we were talking about the gardens and the grapevines and the springs that were gushing forth, and how our Creator, He says that He brings life forth, and then He says that you may eat of the fruits, and then He says like Subhanallah, and then He says like, you know, it's glory be to Him, and then the next thing is, and a sign is for them the night we withdraw from it the day, then behold, they are left in darkness. It's like a change. Like this is now a sign to see that the Creator is like, you know, He gives you these fruits and these gardens and these springs, and a sign for them is the night, where He removes the day from it, He removes the light from it, I guess, and they are left in darkness. And for me, this is this idea that to see, and then it goes on to say the sun then runs towards a stopping point. I'm saying the sun then like there's like light for a certain amount. So how I interpret this is previously we're talking about the people that didn't accept the message, and then they ridiculed it, and then the Creator's talking about how, you know, woe unto them if only they knew the message, and then He talks about how a sign is the darkness that we gave them, and then also the sun that now comes. So a sign for me of the Creator is truly bringing forth this, the springs and the gardens would be my own experiences, where I also see that the day is removed from my life, where I am brought night as a sign. I am brought night when I am maybe going down this path of ridiculing the message, of not accepting the message. I am given night from Him. I'm left in darkness intentionally. And then after that, maybe after I change away, or as something happens, or I'm guided, then a sun comes for a certain amount of time. Then a sun rises, and I see in my own life that, as the Creator was saying before, that, you know, don't they see the gardens and the trees and the springs? I see on my own life that the things that when I was in darkness, and then the sun was able to come out after it, after I was able to follow the message, or after I was able to see things as messages, then I was able to see the gardens myself. So in my own experience, I can confirm this.
Jazakallah khairan, both of you, like really important points raised. One thing, like these verses are explicitly and openly challenging our understanding of the nature. Because as Atik mentioned, we are accustomed to take things as granted. We say, like, sun goes and night comes. There's nothing interesting there. But this verse says, no, it is us taking light or taking day from your, the life, and it becomes a night. So it is us doing that. Of course, it's our job to, try to verify this verse, if it is true or not, whether, the transition between night and day actually and really necessitate an active agent who make decisions, determination, like the next verse, as next verse mentions. Whether the transition between night and day requires a determination of someone who's, and this someone or something, it's not anything, but it must be exalted in might and all-knowing. So it is our job to verify this. It is our job to see, confirm this. And this is actually the way we know about our Lord. Without such confirmations, without such investigations, the word exalted in might, or the word all-knowing, alim, right, would be just a word that we recite. So that's one point. Another point, as Abdurrahman made, these verses are actually can be also read as analogies to what we experience in our life. And this is usually the core methodology that we aim to follow in these discussions, because verses are helpful for us. Verses are guidance for us, and this is what Quran claims to be a guidance, good news for us. These verses, only if they solve a big problem in our life. And as Abdurrahman says, sometimes we find ourselves in darkness. We see that we live in a night time of our life. And our Creator says, you know what? Maybe this is because you're ridiculing your messengers. Maybe you don't see the message that they bring for you, to you. They don't read, you don't listen them. And also another thing we see here is mentioning of order and transition between night and day, and then going one level further between sun and night, which are kind of at least for us signs of day and night. How there's an order between them, how they follow a certain path, how they follow, they're destined to a certain point. How there's a order in everything that we observe. And why this is important? Because it also, going back to previous verses that we studied, it also connects to the transition between life and death. So if this analogy holds, then Quran is actually suggesting us that there might be an order between within the transition of between life and death. You may see some order there too. So any questions, any comments, any remarks so far? Yusuf, please go ahead.
So as you were saying, we need to, like Quran is speaking, the Creator is saying this is the case, it's a guidance, and you said we need to verify this if this is really the case, especially verse 38. So, and the sun runs on the course forward its destination or its stopping point, and that is the determination of the exalted in might, the knowing. So is this really the case? What does this verse tell us? I guess it might be good to talk a little bit about this. Is it really the case? When I look at the sun, seeing that it is flowing within an order of minute calculations, and it's there like it explicitly tells me to my conscious mind that such everything is placed so well within the larger scheme of the existence that it at the end I end up benefiting from that sunlight from multiple different ways. My eyes enjoy its light. I am able to observe the existence. I make sense of existence through that light, but also it warms me up. It has a relationship with the plants, with the animals, like with the bees and everything. So whoever put that sun over there must be aware of my eyes, must be aware of the bee, must be aware of the leaves of the trees and everything. And since the order is ongoing, it must be the same person, same one who does all of them at the same time. Otherwise, a rising of a conflict is just inevitable. But this is something that keeps happening day in, day out. So and then I asked the question, can it be chance that is doing all of these? Or what is it? What sort of a consciousness is that is doing this? Since I cannot find such a conscious candidate who is doing that job on Earth or within existence, or sun having a all-encompassing knowledge, it doesn't make sense, it doesn't fit. So whoever is moving one such particle as sun becomes like a particle, must be the one who is controlling the whole existence, where sun is just the dust, just a small particle as a part of this larger existence. So I guess when I look at this picture, I see that a knowledge, an all-encompassing knowledge is required to place the sun at its exact location right now. And also there needs to be someone who is willing to move it. Like the will is evidently taking place. There is an action. Somebody is choosing to put it where it is. It's not like, well, it has to stop in there. No. A deliberate choice is obviously taking place. So knowledge is there, the choice is there, and also this all-encompassing power is required. The one who moves the sun is the one who moves my eyelids, must be capable of someone to be able to raise my eyelids to open up for the sun to enter to my eyes, must be as strong to move the sun in its course, because the two are related. So knowledge, power, and will are evident from that experience. And this is how this verse is concluding, saying that ذَلِكَ تَقْدِيرُ الْعَزِيزِ الْعَلِيمِ. So indeed, if you look at how you are interacting with the sun, you will observe that this is a taqdir. Somebody willingly made this. It's not by itself, or it's not just inevitably this is how it happened to be, or it is thus. No, there is a deliberate choice. Deliberate choice of an aziz, like an exalted one. Exalted meaning, I guess, can be taken as not of type of this existence. He is beyond and above what I experience in here, because I couldn't attribute any agency to anything in this existence. I couldn't say sun is doing it. The one who does it must be exalted than the existence itself. And also he must be all encompassing in terms of power. And then Al-Alim, he must be all knowing. It cannot be that he only needs to know how sun functions and the rest can be taken care of by somebody else, something else. Because the intermingling, or the way the existence comes into play, so much interconnected, shows that it must be an all-knowing one. So very beautifully, the last 3 words of this verse is summarizing what I'm already experiencing. And this is being used as an evidence for the initial claim. What was the initial claim? Resurrection. And there had been very beautiful points for that. Jazakallah khair.
Jazakallah khair. That was really beautiful I guess we can also take the verse other way around and say that if you observe sun and if you observe its movement, not from a like a physics perspective or cosmological perspective, just look at the movement of the sun as a layman. So just as a side note, I'm sorry, it doesn't mean that if you look from a physics perspective, you will see something different. I'm not suggesting this, but I'm suggesting you don't have to be a physicist. You don't have to be a cosmologist to see that. That's what I mean. So when you look at the sun, you will see that whatever is creating it, whatever it's moving it, it must be exalted in mind, it must be all-knowing, and it must be making some decisions, determinations about it. You will see that, you will come to this conclusion. And why this is important? Because if creation is in the hands of Aziz and Alim, if this is the case, if every decision is made by him, made by it, however you see, if this is the case, then you are in the good hands. Then your worry about going to non-existence, it may have a solution, because you are not in the hands of blind forces acting against you, trying to, destroy you, trying to, what is the word for, sorry. Anyway, you are not in the hands of such forces anymore, but your fate is in the hands of the one who is all-knowing and all-powerful, exalted in mind. So there might be a solution there. And also another part of the same verse, sun runs towards its stopping point. There is a purpose in the movement. It's not chaotic. And this is just an analogy for everything we see. So you can use the same approach for anything you see. The webcam I see there, and it's working, it's helping me. It facilitates the communication between you and me. And when I look at it carefully, I see that the one who creates it, one who makes it function, must be exalted in might, the knowing, all-knowing. And again, there is a purpose. There's a meaning behind it that I benefit. If this is so for everything, whatever I see outside, the previous verse, right? Whatever I see outside. And if it's so for everything in me, whatever I see in me. In other words, everything that I experience, everything that I interact with, if this is this case, then for something I don't know, for something that is gaib for me, that is unseen for me, I can easily come to the conclusion that there must be a meaning, there must be a purpose for that too. Like my death. It's an unseen for me, unknown for me. But these verses suggest that there must be a purpose there. And you can confirm that. How? By looking at the things that you know, that you have access to. And of course, this is not the end, because we already discussed in many different places that we can actually have access to this idea of concept of death as well, because we do experience many deaths in our life, like my youth being dead by now. But anyway, this is another discussion. And also the verse 37 telling us that there's always a transition between them. There's always an order between them, death and life, day and night. So day or night is not the end of day, or day is not the end of night. They complement each other in a way that the verse explains it as if they are, within each other. We take off day out of night. It's not like there's night, there's day, they are independent. But at least here it is explained as night and day within each other, coming together to complete our experience, complete our life. And it says when we take day out of night, they are such interrelated, just like life and death. And we saw such examples in previous week when we were talking about dry earth and all the plants, or dry branch of grapes, grapevines and the grapes themselves. And other two verses. Any comments, any remarks? Of course, you are free, especially Yusuf, to make reference to previous verses as well. So do not feel obliged to make comments on these two verses. But it's preferred, of course. So any comments, any remarks about verses 39 and 40? Abdurrahman and Aishan, please go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, the obvious meaning that comes from it's clearly saying that the night doesn't take over the day and the day does not take over the night. And then it talks about the moon. It doesn't directly talk about the night, actually. In the first verse, at least, it says in the moon, like we've given it phases until it returns like the old day stock. I'm not sure what the old day stock is. I don't have like an image of such a thing.
So sorry for interruption. Probably you can just take it as a dried branch, like a dried and maybe bended branch which holds a fruit.
So it's like a dead branch that has a sweet date at the end of it. Something like that. Okay.
Yes, like I'm adding this fruit because it's a date branch. But just literal translation, I guess it's talking about the moon taking its phase of what is called crescent. Like very, but the analogy is important, of course, and the analogy is about probably the people who can speak Arabic could help me with this part. But the way I see it is as bended dry branch of date palm.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, okay, it's the crescent. But yeah, the moon. So I guess like sometimes there can be a full moon or there can be a half moon. There's different. If you walk out on a full moon, it can be very bright outside. So there's different depths of darkness. There's different depths of darkness that you fall into, that is created for you. And the fact that it talks about a moon, a moon, it's ordered. It's part of the order, and it's not randomly happening. When the nighttime comes at night, you don't think it's like a random thing. Actually, it's very predictable. You can calculate, let's say, the sunset that's going to happen 100 years from now, and it's probably not even such a difficult calculation. Like they can do this. So the moon is about order. the sun is about order. And then in the next verse, it touches on that. It says like, it's not allowable for the sun to reach the moon or for the night to overtake the day. You know, they're all both in an orbit. They're swimming together. It's, you know, they're both like, as we were speaking before, like he's the one that creates everything in pairs. You know, the sun and the moon is a type of pair. They're created together in an order. None of them are fighting each other. They're not trying to overtake each other. And similarly in our lives, let's say we will always go through phases of happiness and phases of sadness. You know, there will always be darkness and then light, because these are both different creations that we will be going through, and each of them requires us to read the meaning of it and understand it, and you know, just I guess seek for guidance through each of these experiences that we go through. You know, we learn about who our creator is, or the qualities of our creator in both like the, let's say, the sun happenings in our life, and also like the darkness happenings in our life. They both are very educative. They're both in both of them we can get closer to our creator, and we also get closer to understanding, you know, our impotence and our neediness in both of them. And I think this verse, and as a previous verse, is like this idea that everything is in my creator's hand. Even in this day and darkness, it's also in his hand. And there's an order to this, and he's doing it in an order, and it's appointed that you go through it. It's not random.
Just as one additional point, you know, I'm not trying to stretch out analogies or anything, but just something that this reminded me of, this imagery of this cycle or this orbit or this order of the moon and the sun that follows it and the moon that comes back, reminds me of, you know, this dynamic between questions and answers, inquiries and responses, this sort of dialectic between the two, that the moment I have a question, I seek for its answer, which must follow it. And then another question arises, followed by a different response. And this is this, you know, just as darkness in this respect is not necessarily a bad thing, but part of the order, the questions that I may face lead me and guide me to also the dawn that arrives. To be dramatic.
Or you could even say it's the questions. The questions are necessary to be able to come to the dawn that arrives. You have to go through that darkness to reach that sun.
Yeah, it's a very beautiful imagery.
Jazakallah khairan. Very beautiful points, and I honestly do not think that there is such a thing when you read Quran as far-fetching the analogy, or like it must speak to you, right? And if it is speaking to you in that sense, it is speaking to you in that sense. So there's no reason to deny it. And so it's interesting, like we're studying all these verses about the sun, moon, day, night. And among us, there are engineers, there are, scientists. But still, we don't talk about, the physical properties of the sun, the moon, or solar system, whatever. How night and day are, emerge, how they created, and so on. We don't know why. Because at least this is how I think. This is not the point of Quran. The Quran is not there to teach me about sun as a physical object, because I can already study it as a physical object with every tools that I'm given by my creator. To study sun as a physical object, I don't need a guidance about unseen. I don't need a speech of my creator in my hand. I can just take my, measuring stick and measure the sun, of course, in a metaphorical sense. So the purpose of Quran is guiding me, my life. And I'm not sun, I'm not moon, but it's still talking about sun and moon. It's obvious, otherwise it defies its purpose. It's obvious that my creator is using these words so that I can understand something. They are the words that I can, connect with. But the purpose is not the words used. Purpose is not the words themselves that are being used, the moon or sun. The purpose is to see the day of my life, night of my life, sun of my life, the moon of my life, the order within in my life, transition between phases within in my life. Like how beautifully it is explained the phases of human being, especially the old ages. And the moon, we have determined for it phases. It goes like, I guess the literal translation would be determined for it some stopping points, or determined for it for the locations that it will go through. For it phases until it returns like the old bended, dried palm, date branch. Like, isn't that obvious that it's talking about me? That I'm going through these phases until becoming like a dried, bended branch. My old ages, don't you see? My skin is drying up. I'm almost started being bended. Today I was complaining about my knees, my back. So anyway, like, this is the most beautiful explanation, most beautiful description of the human life. That your life, even the one that you see as a dried, bended branch, it's under our control. It is determined. Everything you go through, determined, including the point that you see as end, your death. It is part of the order. Yusuf, please go ahead.
Yeah, so in verse 37, I guess, it was being mentioned that pairs from the things, I guess 36, yeah. So pairs from the things that the earth produces, from within you, and from the things that you do not know of. I guess this is, in the following verses, the same thing continues. So when I look at the day and night or sun and moon, there is this obvious example out there in the existence outside. And then when I apply it to myself as stages or phases of my life, the same pattern is there, and I can confirm this. And then I say, how about the things that I do not know? I only know half of the story. And how about the other half of the story? About the things that you do not know of. And I guess this would apply to, okay, day and night is like an example of death. Every night I sleep, every morning I wake up, I experience this cycle. I know of it. I experience, if you like, the smaller brother of death every day, younger brother. But how about the ultimate death of me? Am I going to wake up from that death? What is the pair of this death? Is there going to be a life after death? So I guess this is where, among the things that you do not know of, is being exemplified. So as you were saying, we can apply this to ourselves because this metaphor, I mean, it is literally the case for sun and moon. It is metaphorically the case for my lives day and night? And how about the ultimate death, not daily death, but my ultimate death? Is it going to have another morning, another resurrection? Or also, how about the memories that are dead already? My past, are they truly dead? The beloved that I loved so much and now is beyond the grave, is that person going to wake up, or am I going to meet with that person again? I guess these are all the things that this, if I take now this as a metaphor, becomes perfectly like a tool for a proof that I'm looking for. And actually these verses, if we take these and the previous ones, is a prophetic teaching, or prophets or Quran in here is telling me a way of how to think, because there is an unknown, but how am I going to crack this unknown? The unknown in here being, am I going to have a life beyond grave? Is all my efforts like futile and fruitless, or there's going to be a return for that? All the things that are being scattered going to be collected together at some point, because yesterday is gone. I left whatever that I was playing with yesterday in yesterday. Today is a new day. So is there going to be a collection of all of these, or am I leaving everything behind? So these are very real questions, and this is a huge unknown for me. Where am I heading towards? These are very huge unknowns. In here, Quran is teaching us a way to find an answer to this old question, as old as humanity. How do you crack such a question? So these verses are using very simple examples from the existence, teaching us how to crack those hard questions. So it's very beautiful how Quran is using so simple imagery, but teaching us or providing us a way to find a satisfactory answer to those very tough questions, to the extent that it's going to satisfy me, not only intellectually, like coming up with a very hard derivation, and eventually you understand half of it, you don't understand the other half, but due to its complexity, you say, well, it must be true. It's not like that. It's giving us a very simple solution, which anybody can relate to. As you said, if I take the alteration of day and night from a layman's perspective, which I am, because I don't know really the detailed computations of sun and moon, they just say so and I buy into it. But looking at it in the horizon, I see that it is within an order. Sun was rising from this side in the winter. Now it's coming to more east, west, whatever. It's not, there is this order I'm observing visually. So Quran teaches me how to use this as an evidence for resurrection. So if I ridicule the messengers, I'm going to deprive me of this tool, because humanity was not able to come up with such a simple method to answer this hard question. Although after reading it from messengers, hearing it from messengers, we say, well, of course it makes sense. This is so easy. But we didn't come up with this method without being instructed by the Creator through messengers.
Thank you very much, Jazakallah khair. The last point you made, like humanity was not able to come up with this, the method, the solution. Why? Because we always ridicule messengers. When we see sun and moon, we ridicule them. We say, you know, there's a ball of fire, the other one is just a big rock. We ridicule them, while they were trying to tell us something. They were trying to, you know, teach us something. We ridicule them. We don't read their message. And the last part, it's not allowable for the sun to reach the moon, nor does the night overtake the day, but each in an orbit is swimming. I guess we can read this verse as how everything is under control. they cannot, disobey what they are told. So is one way to take it. Another way to take it is we see them as opposites, sun and moon, day and night, and say that opposites cannot take the others its pairs place. I don't know, but I have I'm really reluctant to take such verses as talking about the opposites, because in reality there's no such thing as opposites in creation. Everything comes from the same source. They coming from the same source. They are united. The word opposite, brings the idea, the concept of tension, or what is the better word for, like a fight between the two, as if conflict. Yes, thank you, Atik. Brings the idea of conflict, but we don't see any conflict in creation, actually. The secular ideology, this naturalistic secular ideology, tries to convince us everything relies on conflicts. But in reality, there is no conflict. And this verse is actually telling us what it says. It's not allowable for sun to reach the moon. It means there is no conflict between them, neither between day and night, nor between death and life. You won't see a conflict there. And it means death is not the end of life. Death is not, the lack of life. When we are deprived from life, we are dead. No, this is not the case, this verse says. Death, just like life, sun just like moon, or day just like night, they are different creations. They are interrelated to each other. Death is a creation that our Creator, bestows us. It's a new way of being. It's not non-existence. It's not emptiness. It is another type of creation. There's no conflict between the two. Just like you don't see any conflict between day and night. They are actually, within each other. And I guess this is the crux of, this part that we studied from the 36th last verse of the last week. From the 36th to here, the Quran is telling us that everything is created in pairs. Everything is in harmony. Even the fluctuations in your life, that the parts that you don't like, the parts that you regret, the parts that you are ashamed of, they are in perfect harmony with the parts that you like, the parts that you, most enjoy. When they are together, they make the perfect sense. And there's always a transition between them. And within this transition, between day and night, you will find your Lord. The same way, the transition between life and death, you will find your Lord. I guess this is all from my end. We are out of time already. But if you have a final remark, final question, final comment, please go ahead and share with us. I will be happy to expend the time a little bit more for you. Otherwise, we can conclude for this week, inshallah. A few more seconds. Wait. Okay. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. الفاتحة.